Okay, our next presenter is Reverend Laura MacLachlin, and she's going to speak on the laws of oneness. And Laura is a certified minister, medium, and healer of the United Metaphysical Churches, where she has retired from the roles of co-chair of seminary and former executive board president. So wonderful. I always enjoy her messages, and let's welcome her, Laws of Oneness.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everybody. Boy, this place is full, seen and unseen.
Oh.
Everett Reefier Marie was here. For some of us that used to go to the Great Lakes when we had dark hair. Talking this morning about the laws of oneness. Those of us who are metaphysically minded look at the Bible and read it with sort of three-dimensional eyes. We're looking for the hidden wisdom that's in there. It's what we're trained to do. We know that, like a lot of other sacred texts in a lot of wonderful world religions, it's written on many levels. Jesus described that as people having eyes to see and ears to hear, so that everyone at every level, as they read those words, are picking up some wisdom for their own soul growth. On this earth plane, when the Master Jesus said, "I'll come back and help," like we're being called upon to do again, it was the heralding of a time when the earth plane itself was ready to sustain more mature souls. During the Old Testament time, there were a lot of very young souls who actually needed rules to live by on the earth plane. Don't kill each other. Just don't kill each other, okay? Thou shalt not. It's like talking to children, because they needed that kind of guidance. But by the time the earth plane was ready for the New Testament, it was time to learn discernment, and it was time to learn personal responsibility. So it became blessed are ye, so that we could make choices. We could start to learn about how we should treat one another and why one way of treating each other might be better than another way. So natural law started to come into the picture, encoded in those writings that we find in the New Testament. Natural law and living in accordance therewith become the keys to the kingdom. Because once we learn how to use the energies of the earth plane in positive ways for co-creation, we aren't going to suffer through all the trials and tribulations of the life lessons and the karma that we've got to balance and all the messy stuff that goes on here on the earth plane. We find that law of oneness embedded in a very simple line in St. Paul's epistle to the Colossians in the New Testament. He opened by trying to explain to them that he couldn't be with them physically at that time. But he said, "I am with you in spirit." And that becomes, we as metaphysicians, a sort of cosmic wink that says the energy, that God energy, is everywhere present. And it animates all of us, all life forms. And it connects us energetically no matter where we are physically, or what sort of obstacles we may see between one another. Marilyn Autry wrote a wonderful book that we use as a text in the UMC seminary. It's called A River of Life. And she wrote about the law of oneness in this way. She said, "This connection is beyond time and space and change. Every physical and spiritual law is encompassed within this law." So once we understand that we are all interconnected, all the other spiritual laws kind of fall into place. So we can gather from that, yeah, it's probably true that we're all part of a collective consciousness, all beings, all life, incarnate, discarnate, all a part of the energy of that divine source. It also confirms in my mind a theory that a lot of us agree with, that this interconnectedness of life is happening, I love this from Doreen Virtue, in all directions of time. Perhaps even simultaneous lifetimes. Maybe we're living them all at once rather than in linear time. So it brings us back to the latest challenge we're all facing in our country right now. And I think because we're working so hard for world peace and peace in this country and opening the spiritual eyes of the leaders of our country, that we need to think for just a moment about all the mass shootings that are going on. Don't you wish that natural law could be taught in school? Don't you wish that starting with the youngest children, they could begin to understand all the different forms of the golden rule? Just treat each other the way you want to be treated. And then as they grow, you could add some more seeds, plant some more seeds in their hearts and minds about this idea of oneness. Maybe we could plant those seeds before their friends or family or the people they admire start to teach them who to hate simply because they're not exactly like them. Would we be teaching them or would we just be reminding them? We wish we could say, you can't shoot away your problems. You can't shoot away everyone that doesn't look or think exactly like you do. What's really going on here? Don't you wish we could ask them, are you really looking at yourself? Are you feeling isolated? Are you feeling lesser than? Are you feeling that you need to somehow stop the pain? Could we help them understand that they are at that moment actually killing an aspect of themselves? That their hopes and dreams are not all that different than the people who are standing before them at that moment. Don't you wish we could say, stop? This is, or was, or will be you. The law of oneness tells us that our interconnectedness transcends death. We may have taken on a particular race or creed or nationality in this life because we have to facilitate all the life lessons that we wanted to get squared away this time. But soon we'll all be finishing this lifetime, and later we'll flow back into a physical body again, and we'll be yet another race or gender. Why try to destroy the very spirit that you may have been in your last incarnation? The eyes that you look into for that split second before you decide to commit an act of violence, their eyes are your eyes. After we get word of yet another incident, as a result of the actions that we hope that children someday will grow to understand should never be a choice, the law of oneness and two of its first cousins, the law of cause and effect and the law of karma, will require that the guilty party experience whatever it is they did to someone else, thus creating another link that we can use as an example of the awareness that what we do to someone else, at that same moment, we're actually doing it to ourselves. If only we could tell them. Paul continued on in that epistle to offer a prescriptive answer to stopping the endless cycle of violence that he knew of then and we see now centuries later. Isn't it amazing how all those sacred texts are so timeless? He encouraged people to move their consciousness into what he called the higher realms. Now we might refer it to higher vibrations. He suggested that they set their minds on things above and not the things of earth. In other words, don't be fooled by the appearances here on the earth plane. Our differences, the outward projection of ourself to someone else, are just an illusion. It's challenging for young souls, and when I say young souls, I'm talking about soul ages, not chronological ages at this moment. But those young souls incarnate right now who usually are so suspicious and threatened by anyone not exactly like themselves. They're the ones we see on the news every night. At one point he wrote, "Put off from you all these things, anger, wrath, malice, foul conversations. How did he know about tweeting? How did he know about hate manifestos? How did he know about those chants at those rallies? He didn't just tell them why, though. We can fill in the blanks now. We know it's because not only does it drag down our own vibration to base chakra levels, but that negative energy goes out into the ethers, the waters of space, to find a being which, like a tuning fork, will resonate with that negativity and get them all fired up, and perhaps then will find that they commit their own violent acts. We see it now happening all the time, how easy it is. People that know nothing about metaphysics talk about copycat killings. Well, all they're doing is vibrating in harmony, unfortunately, with something that they've seen on television. Something that seemed like it was going to make a statement for them as somehow lesser than someone else, using in their own twisted mind violence to level the playing field. The thing about God energy, even as a pure love energy, is that it's a neutral creative force. It doesn't have an opinion about what we put out on the ethers. But we know as children of that energy that we better take responsibility for it, and we better not contribute negativity to the earth plane's overall energy, because everyone goes down at that moment. I guess we're kind of slow learners sometimes, because Paul could be talking to us as much as anyone else back in his day. His blueprint also reminded us the same thing that it reminded the Colossians back in those days. He said, therefore, as holy and beloved, in other words, as children of that pure love energy which is our source, put on mercy, kindness, gentleness, humbleness, patience. He wrote, forgive one another. And I would suggest to you that that could also mean for some of these souls that are struggling with not wanting to be around or a part of, or even see a coexistence with people not like themselves, perhaps they need to forgive the things within themselves that they project onto someone else and then attempt to kill off. Paul called love the bond of perfection. God energy, connecting everything in the universe, is perfect. We forget that when we come here. We can't jot it on our hands before we slide down the birth canal. Don't forget, God energy is pure love. God energy is perfect. Align with it. I love the story about the mom coming into her baby's room one afternoon only to hear her slightly older son say to the baby, remind me about God, I'm starting to forget. I use that story a lot because I think sometimes we all forget. We get so immersed in this material plane. We start to believe the things that we see with our physical eyes. What a different world it would be if we could practice mindful spreading of the light. And what a difference it would be if we could teach or remind young children to do it too. They're the most likely to still remember what it's like to be a part of that pure love source from whence they came. It wasn't that long ago that they came from that light source. And so to remind them before this material plane gets a hold of them and changes that would be such an amazing accomplishment. Paul advised us about that knowing. He called it putting on the new life, which is renewed in the knowledge after the pattern that was originally created. Imagine a time on this earth plane when everyone knew that. In other words, we came from a place of oneness and light. We can re-merge with that oneness and light anytime we wish, if we just take the time to turn away from the material plane and go within. We just need to remember we long to get back to that divine love. We know sometimes, we just don't have words for it, that there's something missing when we get too immersed in the material plane. We can remember on a soul level what it felt like when the law of oneness ruled the day. Interestingly enough, Paul even threw in a little hymnology when he was writing to the Colossians, a lesson in raising the energy of the earth plane itself. He advised them to teach the principles of peace and oneness through psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. And those of us that conduct worship services know that the reason why we use music is that it brings everyone in the room to a higher, more peaceful, and harmonious vibration. Some of us had to rush here because they were late, and some people lost their car keys and they were in a tizzy. So how do we homogenize everyone's energy that comes from different places in their lives so that everyone can be elevated in their consciousness in their time together through music and songs, which bring that energy together? People who may know nothing about energy or anything about meditation say things like, a rising tide lifts all boats. And it's absolutely true. It's the law of oneness in action. So we who have been taught about energy, how to manage energy, how to use energy, strive to raise our vibration in meditations and routinely, as John suggested this morning, routinely send that love energy out throughout the world as light. Doing our part so that all boats and people of all faiths, nationalities, stations in life, anything that visibly might separate one spirit from another, can come together and be seen as all sparks of that same divine light source. Hearts get opened. Minds get changed. So let's get at it. Let's double down on our planetary meditations. Let's not just worry about our own needs. We as metaphysicians know that our needs are already met. Instead, we think about our planet. We think about all those and our loved ones, the ones we don't even know, who need help, who need healing, countries that need healing. Help the baby and the young souls, not age-wise, soul age-wise, who struggle at this time of soul growth because there's so much negative energy to feed off of out there. We can work to neutralize and transmute that energy. That negativity that we feel does not have to be the new normal. We know our energy of positive intention seeks out and merges just like the tuning fork with the energy of love and healing that's being generated by all the other light workers out there. Sometimes we feel lonely, but they're there. Oneness as a healing force, universal energy, it's there. And when we tune in to that sort of communal energy, it converges so that positive change is possible. Imagine what that could look like on a planetary level. We talk so much about it, but sometimes we just can't see it with our physical eyes. With those hearts opened and those minds changed, countries can learn and remember how to work together again. The distrust can be neutralized. Trust can be rebuilt. When our economy thrives, all economies thrive. Countries can be rebuilt as is necessary right this minute, with help from all other nations after those disasters like Hurricane Dorian. The sick and injured are able to be helped. Abundance is clearly visible in the lives of all people, not just 1%. The key to our evolution has always been about seeing one another as more than whatever our earthly identity is in this lifetime. Paul, to be relevant in his day, wrote, "Neither Jew nor Aramaean, Circumcised nor uncircumcised, no, we're not checking. Greek nor barbarian, slave nor free man. The labels change, but the message crosses all directions of time. The healing and transmutation is needed so much in all directions of time. This is a 3-year in numerology. I learned that from this gentleman right here back in the day when I had dark hair. He did too. We can creatively use our words to decree an end to the violence. I got 7 3s in my chart. Try to shut me up about stuff like that. We can affirm our oneness with each other and with that divine source that animates all life. It can become the decree about who we are. We can set the stage for 2020, and yep, it's going to be a big one, isn't it? Partnership, divine feminine, ruling with love, to open hearts and open spiritual eyes. I think we had hoped we'd be there by now. You know, the Aquarian age didn't start yesterday, but unfortunately, again, sometimes we're slow learners. So our work is cut out for us. It's our call to action. So many blessings to each and every one of you light workers who are brightening the corner, as the old hymn says, where you are. Blessings to each of you.